Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Today I have co-host Anthony with me, and we are going to do random strangeness discussions today. This is where we do 3 or 4 random strange topics. We bring them to you, and we share our thoughts about them. So anyway, Anthony, it's been a little bit since we've talked. How are you doing, buddy?
Good. Things are good. We are... as I've mentioned before, we have a couple little businesses that we're working on, and one of them's our main one is like a frozen dessert food truck. We have a couple trucks, and at the time of this recording, it's towards the end of the winter, which the winter is just so slow for us. Obviously, it's frozen dessert. No one wants to eat cold things when it's cold out. Well, most people don't. But anyway, so we're now getting to the point where things are ramping up, and so it's exciting. This is an exciting time. I can start having money again. So.
Yeah, I know you're going to get super busy very soon here. Doesn't it all start to kick off in, well, really May, right? It gets crazy for months. Right?
Yeah, May, and then you know this, and for the listeners as well, where we live in Utah, like you just never know what the weather's going to be like from November to May, really. I mean, sometimes it's cold, it's snowing in May, and sometimes it's beautiful in March, like it has been a few days ago. Again, as we're recording this, I don't know when it's going to be released, but as we're recording this, it's pretty nice out. So this year we are ramping up some outdoor stuff in April, and we're ramping up some indoor stuff here starting next weekend. So we're taking a risk. We're trying to get out there because nothing makes me more frustrated than when I'm holding off doing events or committing to things on the calendar thinking it's going to be cold weather, and then I wake up that morning and it's like 75, 80 degrees sunny, and I'm like, no. So I'm like, all right, we're going to take the risk. We'll do so we are booking a couple things in April. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it'll be, that'll be the day of the week where it's warm out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it has been a oddly warm winter, so maybe it'll get warmer quicker. Hopefully it doesn't do something weird and get cold again. So
I agree. Other than that, so we're good. We're getting busy. So that's what we're doing over here.
Awesome. Busy's good. That's good. Well, look, as we get into this random strangeness episode, one of the thoughts I had recently was watching the news. Did you notice that Gene Hackman, his wife, and his dog all were found dead suspiciously at their house? Do you remember? So Gene Hackman, the old Lex Luthor from the Superman in the 70s. Do you remember him?
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that because I don't watch like the Oscars or the Emmys and all that stuff. But I was scrolling through, usually when I eat breakfast, I'm watching the news or I'm kind of scrolling on my iPad. And I did see this morning that Morgan Freeman did a tribute to Gene Hackman. And so that's the first I'd heard of that. So I didn't know that his family was found. You said his wife and his dog?
One of their 3 dogs, yeah.
Really?
All found dead at the same time. Really weird.
Really interesting. Yeah, that is very strange. See, I didn't look into it past that Morgan Freeman tribute. I thought, Gene Hackman's an older guy. Like maybe he had some health issues I wasn't aware of. Again, I don't follow that stuff super closely. But that's suspicious that all 3, I wonder if they're found in their home?
Yeah.
Or there's carbon monoxide or like...
Well, they've checked that, no. So it's interesting that we'll eventually hopefully know more about it. But... yeah, I mean, he was like 95 years old, so I get maybe something happened there, but his wife was like 70. I mean, she was much younger, and a dog too. It just doesn't make sense.
And no foul play, evidence of foul play?
They didn't see any, and I mean, the results of their investigation are not complete yet, so we'll see. But at this point, nothing. It's really, really weird.
Yeah, that is weird. That doesn't typically happen. That's very strange.
Yeah. I don't know why I brought that up. I just thought it was a pretty strange and weird experience recently that was in the news.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to look into it a little further then, because like I said, I saw that tribute this morning and I thought, I didn't even watch the whole thing. I just saw kind of the initial part and I was like, oh man, that's a bummer. Like, he's a great actor, but
Right.
again, I knew he was the original Lex Luthor and stuff. So I was like, okay, maybe it was just, it was that time. But now hearing this, it sounds like there could be something else going on.
Yeah.
Not nefarious, but just something else happened.
Yeah. It's really weird. I'm looking forward to hearing what they find out eventually. So anyway, strange, but let's go on to our normal strange topics here at this point. So we are going to start off with physical conditions, strange, unexpected. And this is one that you may know more about. It's actually called geographic tongue. So a lot of people don't even know that this exists. And
They think it's a joke.
yeah, they think it's a joke. It's a psoriasis-like symptom of the mouth. It's kind of harmless, but potentially painful depending on what you eat and things like that. So what do you think about geographic tongue?
Well, being a survivor of geographic tongue myself, I have some thoughts on that. Yeah, it's funny that when you sent that, I didn't know if you knew, if you had realized that that's something that I have. Now, this is, I figured you probably remembered, but I was like, does he know who he's sending this to? No, it's funny that you say it's a psoriasis of the mouth, because that makes it seem super bad, and it can be really bad. The more I've looked into it, the more I've thought maybe I have a really mild case of it. But everyone thinks it's a joke,
Right.
and like I'll be like, oh yeah, I got a geographic tongue, and they're like, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm like, no, for real, I do. And they're like, okay. And it's usually when we're eating, and they're like, prove it. And I have a mouthful of food, and I'm like, but essentially, if you were to Google it, essentially what it is, it's without getting into some of the facts I've written down. I mean, it's basically like my tongue has cracks in it that are a little bit larger than I think what you'd find in a normal tongue, which just makes you more sensitive to like citrus and spices and things like that. And I'm sure there's a lot more severe cases. When I've looked it up online, there's like stuff where I'm like, oh, that looks pretty bad. Yeah. Where mine is like and I'm not going to show on the camera right now, but it's some cracks, a couple little cracks in the tongue, and then and just some discoloration around the sides of the tongue. Again, nothing too crazy, but it's cool to look at. It's kind of cool, maybe a little crazy, but it's not like, it's not something that's alien. Funny story is I knew what it was called in high school and middle school, and no one believed me, and I really didn't show anyone. And the reason I didn't is because I was worried that if girls saw that I had these cracks in my tongue, that they wouldn't want to kiss me. And so I waited till after I had a serious girlfriend before I broke the news to her, and she was like, what? And she was fine with it, but it was kind of weird for her to see it, because if I stick my tongue out and like kind of like fold it down and put pressure on it, that's really when like you can see those cracks. So it's an interesting thing. Again, harmless. It's not contagious. It's not life-threatening. There's no cure that's needed for it. Maybe there's a cure. I don't think there's not one that's needed.
Yeah.
And all I have to deal with is I'm the only Hernandez in my family that can't have hot salsa during the Super Bowl. I have to have mild salsa, and even then, sometimes that's a little too much for me. And then also when I go to Brazilian restaurants, they serve like grilled pineapple, and I've learned I can't have that first, because if I have that first, the citrus will irritate. And I like pineapple, but the citrus will irritate my tongue so much that I can't enjoy the rest of my food.
So it impacts the taste, huh?
Yeah. So, the taste is usually fine. It's just your tongue becomes, at least for me, becomes very sore.
Yeah.
And so then I'm drinking, typically if I'm out, it's Brazilian restaurants are fairly nice. So if I get one of those, I typically will have a soda or something. And like even the soda at that point starts to irritate my tongue. So anyway, so that's something interesting. Every time I go out with my friends or my wife to a Brazilian restaurant, they love the pineapple. And I say, maybe at the end, because I don't want it to ruin the whole meal for me. So anyway, not quite life debilitating, but a couple little things I've learned along the way.
Yeah, and definitely something that most people don't even know exists. So if you're listening to this episode, you probably should hop on YouTube and see there's a lot of pictures today of different things and a video or two, a short video of two of things. But anyway, these first two pictures that I've put on the screen are some of the more extreme cases. They're very clear that there's something different going on with the tongue. In a minute or two, there'll be a picture here that is closer to what Anthony was describing, which is more just like cracks and separations in the tongue. But this picture here and the one before it looked a little more extreme. And that's what some of these cases are. So red and white patches are often surrounded by a slightly elevated yellow border in some of the worst cases. But like you were saying, that can cause burning sensations, irritation, and things like that. Now,
it just feels sore. It's like, when you work out a muscle and the next day it's just kind of sore to move around. Yeah. That's, to me, what my experience has been, where it's like, but it can happen in, instantaneous. Like I said, I have that pineapple, and all of a sudden I'm like kind of biting my tongue a little, like just because it's irritating me. Yeah. And then at that point, everything irritates you. So, normally I don't have any problems with sodas and stuff like that. Thank goodness, because I love soda. But yeah, so just a few foods like that really irritate.
So yeah, this picture right here is a lot more like what you were describing, Anthony, more cracks and things like that, and not a lot of discoloration and things.
Yeah, and this actually is even more extreme than what I have. Like, I have probably a little bit longer and deeper cracks, but like the sides of the tongue, how they kind of look a little unpleasant, like bumpy and stuff, like that's not something I have. Yeah. Maybe I need to do a post on Instagram or something after this just to prove to people. But anyway, so it can vary quite a bit. And one thing that's really interesting that I always thought was a joke, but it's real, is I always compared Geographic tongue to a mood ring, because the patterns and the cracks and things in your tongue can shift depending on and change depending on like your mood. So everyone jokes or laughs about that, but I was like, no, that's serious. Like, and my mom always used to say that, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. And then I looked it up, and I was like, because I would look at my tongue and be like, yeah, I think it's changed. Like, I think it's different from what it may have been 2 months ago or whatever. I'm not saying it changes every half hour, but when I looked up some of the facts about it, like, that's real. That those patterns in the tongue really do change, which is super kind of interesting if you think about it, because I mean the tongue is like a big, I guess a sponge, right? It's just a bunch of little feelers, or I don't know how you want to say it. So the fact that some of them are separating and like they'll come back together, and that separation will move somewhere else. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
It is. And as I was looking at this before, the situation can be produced by stress, allergies, hormonal disturbances, nutritional deficiencies, psychological disturbances, just really anything that kind of gets you off or makes you feel like, some kind of a stress or something. They say this can cause or change the patterns. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes along with what you're saying.
Yeah, I should do some research. Maybe some days when I get less sleep, I'll take some pictures, and then days I get more sleep, I'll take pictures or whatever, right? It's interesting. A couple, see, this one's gnarly. This one almost looks like it's like got that
condition with that white film on the tongue. I forget what it's called, but yeah.
Which can happen too, like even in mild cases like me, it doesn't get this bad, but there are times where you could have a slight like light colored tint to your tongue. And then you see like almost little patches like this. Like I said, this one's more extreme. But there's times when the tongue can look a little bit whiter, and you'll see like the patches around the side or something very light, a light discoloration. But again, I've never had anything quite like that.
Yeah. So what else do you want to tell us as an actual person with it or a survivor?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, all my other senses are enhanced for sure because of this disability. So I have cat-like reflexes. I've been told I'm a little bit more good-looking than the average person. stuff like that. No. Some of the other facts that I thought was interesting was it only affects about 1 to 3% of the population. However, it could be more because no one really reports that. I've never told my doctor. In fact, part of me was like, is this real? Like, my mom's been telling this to me my whole life. This is before, back in high school and stuff, before I just thought to Google it, right? That's still a fairly new thing. And then I went to a dentist and I was getting my teeth cleaned, and the hygienist was like, "Whoa, you got a geographic tongue." And I was like, "That's real?" I was like, "I thought that was a joke," because her hands were in my mouth at the time. So it goes unreported mostly. Again, most people experience no pain, but there's sensitivity, a little bit of burning, especially for spicy or acidic foods. It's not contagious. Doctors identify it visually. There's no tests really that are needed for it. There's no cure. It doesn't usually require any treatment unless discomfort is severe, which maybe there are some folks out there with that. The other name for it is benign migratory glossitis, reflecting its harmless nature and tendency to change over time. So anyway, just one of those weird things where it's, just...
That's right.
no real purpose in life, just something random that's like, okay.
Well, I think now there'll be parents out there checking their kids. There'll be boyfriends and girlfriends going, "Can I see your tongue?"
Yeah. I think that the cracks, just makes the kissing more pleasurable. Yeah, that's what I would tell the girls. Yeah. That didn't usually work, but that is what I attempted to say.
Well, there you go, everybody. The geographic tongue, it's real. You've seen pictures now, and you've heard from somebody who actually has it. So there you go.
A real person. You now have a friend with a geographic tongue.
That's right. Okay, let's hop on to our next subject, which I want to start off by asking you something, because you've got little kids. They're getting bigger. But when they were toddlers, what's the big thing that you would say you could count on a toddler doing as they began to move around, crawl around?
You hide everything in sight because they'll put everything in their mouth.
That's right. It's crazy. Everything. Mm-hmm. You're always watching them. You never know what they're going to put in their mouth.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. It's really cute when they start to crawl, obviously. But then it becomes dangerous, because the first thing is they try to put everything in their mouth, and then once they can get to things, they'll try to touch everything, right? So those are the two most dangerous things when that toddler starts moving around, because they're not, bless their hearts, they're not quite bright enough to know that something's not good for them.
That's right.
Yep.
And it's interesting that there are kids that go past that point, right? Like, not just toddlers that start eating some things. I remember you had a friend or two that was having a competition in our neighborhood. It was our religion, our church group, and they were playing with and eating bugs. It was like a competition where they were doing Fear Factor or something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
stink bugs.
Yeah.
Those are nasty. I didn't eat it, but those explode when you bite down on them. So, they would do all kinds of weird stuff like that. You didn't even have to talk them into it.
Right. It was crazy. I wonder if some of them would just eat weird things. Because this picture right here, we have a kid doing what? He's eating dirt. Mm-hmm. And that's a real thing. Like, we know little toddlers will do stuff like that, but there are kids that, well, not even kids, even gets into some adults too, that eat something, and it's called Pica. That's the condition. Mm-hmm. It's an eating disorder in which a person eats things not usually considered food. Young kids often put, non-food items in their mouth, like toys and grass. But it's more because they're curious, right? In this case, though, they feel compelled to put these things in their mouth, which is a problem, right? Because it can lead to some health problems, depending on what you eat and digest. Yeah. And so, Pica is what it's called. Strange.
And this is a different compulsion than like, people will feel the need to like chew on things, right? They'll chew on their, if they have like a drawstring, people that chew on it, or chew ice, stuff like that, right? But I think this goes a little further than that, because they are legitimately eating it.
Right. Not chewing on it, but eating it. Yeah.
This also reminds me, there's another, it might be around the same, I'm sure it's somehow related, but I saw a documentary a little while back about a full-grown woman who was addicted to smelling gasoline. And she would carry around a jar with her all day of gasoline and just open it up and just, like, she would be eating breakfast, and multiple times throughout the meal, just open it and smell it. And open it and smell it.
Wow.
And she just, hundreds, if maybe thousands of times a day, she just could not, she just loved it. She loved it. She was addicted to it. And anyway, the documentary talks about her going to the doctor, and they basically talk about how bad that is for you, and all the issues that could come with it. But she couldn't stop. And so this is what that reminded me of, is like something so crazy like that, where, I mean, there's people that this disorder, people are eating things that are innocent, like maybe a little bit of dirt, which is weird, but innocent, ice, stuff like that. But then you have people that are eating chalk, pieces of metal, paint, chippings, like a lot of stuff that they just, that they feel like they're craving, essentially, because of whatever reason. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I think there's some thought that people have a deficiency and they have a craving for something, right? But this seems to be past that point, right? Kind of like what you're saying. They're compelled to do it. It's almost like an addiction in some way. So who does this affect, right? Young children, especially those under the age of 6, people who are pregnant actually have a higher case of this. And then certain people with mental conditions like autism, spectrum disorder, intellectual disabilities, or schizophrenia. So, if you have this condition, it doesn't mean you have one of those conditions that I just mentioned. But, they seem to have a higher case in those areas with people that fall into those categories.
And if you're chewing ice, you're probably fine. Might not do too well for your teeth, but if you're starting to crave like feces or something, then you got to see a doctor. And that is a common thing that they said when I looked up some of these things. Is there are people that, that crave that kind of stuff, and there are, I think, recommended with this, if you're having those types of things for this condition, there are they do recommend like tests and stuff to see if you are deficient in something to try to meet that need, so you're not doing, you're not being crazy, cray. So,
yeah. And on the picture right now, we have this person with some effects to their teeth, which can be caused, like you were saying earlier, depending on what sorts of things that are being eaten. Some things are toxic and can damage the enamel in your teeth, and so on and so forth. But, going along with what you're saying, one of the other things that can happen is upset stomach based on what people eat. Some people won't even tell anybody about this. There's an example of a person who would eat a lot of hair, and it's actually got a condition. It's a condition that's called trichophagia. Trichophagia. And the problem with eating hair is it gets stuck in your digestive tract, causing blockages, tearing, and other damage. And so it's a real situation. If you see somebody eating things and they may try to hide it, could lead to problems with their digestive system. And then, of course, we were talking about dirt. Parasites are in soil. Mm-hmm. So that can affect people who eat dirt or clay. And that's a condition called geophagia. Weird.
Well, and that can be from animals too. Like if, there's stories of children that eat dirt or whatever, that get a hold of an animal feces, a dog feces or whatever, and end up getting a parasite. They don't even have to eat it, but just by touching it, they can get a parasite that can do some damage. I mean, I've heard stories. My wife's a veterinary technician, and there's stories of kids or whatever just touching feces and somehow contracting a parasite that then disrupts their vision. Because no one identifies it, and it goes all the way up, and just it can start really playing havoc with systems. So we have a couple dogs, and if any of them have an accident inside, it's a strict rule of the kids don't touch it, or because they always want to help clean up or whatever. And so it's like if something happens, wash your hands right away, stuff like that. So anyway, side point there, but There's a lot of things that you might not think of that I would have never have thought of that. A parasite from an animal that could, blind someone or whatever.
Right.
Like I just wouldn't have even thought about that.
Yeah, people need to really just be alert to all these strange things. The body's kind of this, the body really keeps itself in place and it takes care of things. But when something goes out of whack, things go bad pretty quickly. So,
real quick, just want to say that pica I thought was short for something, but it's actually a Latin word that means magpie, which is a bird known for eating almost anything. So
interesting.
Just a little side note there.
Little info for people. Little deeper information. Okay, there we go. So next topic, let's talk about this. But I'm going to enter the subject by asking you, when you think of spooky in Florida, is there anything that comes to mind?
Spooky in Florida?
Yeah.
As in creepy. I mean, I think of Disney World and the Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. It's not necessarily creepy, but as far as I don't know, things I don't like about Florida, alligators.
Right.
But I don't know if that would be creepy or spooky.
Well, I bring it up because that's what people will think of, exactly what you said. That's the first thing I thought of too, is the attractions and Disney and that sort of thing, which Florida is well known for Disney World. So, but there's a place in Florida that's a legend and a lore that many people don't know about, and it's a place in the Keys of Florida. And some say it's creepy and is haunted. Now, when you think of Disney World, you think of Jack Sparrow and all that. But this place is called Captain Tony's Saloon, right? And this is a picture of it on the screen, and it's a place that's been around for a long time. I mean, 1851 is when it first got initiated, and it over time became a number of different things. It was so currently it's a vibrant nightclub and a salon and things like that. And a lot of people go there kind of to hang out. But originally, like I said, it was built in 1851. It was an ice house, and it served various purposes, including being a morgue, a cigarette factory, a telegraph station, and all those things before it became a saloon like it is today. So what's so special about it? Well, just the fact that it's been around forever and it's had different versions of existence makes you wonder, well, of course, there's probably been some strange things that have happened over time, Did you run into any details on Captain Tony's Salon?
Yeah, so here's a few facts that I pulled. It's the oldest bar in Florida.
Yeah.
Obviously, 1851, that seems pretty obvious. Let's see. From 1933 to 1937, it was the first location of Sloppy Joe's bar, where Ernest Hemingway drank during the most productive Key West years before the bar relocated due to a rent dispute, which was part of my question. When we talked about that being so old, I was like, wait, is this the same location or the same building? It doesn't look like the same building. Obviously, there would have been renovations, but it appears that it has been moved. It was. Did you mention who it was named after? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was named after Anthony Captain Tony Turacino, a charismatic boat captain, gun runner, and gambler who bought the bar in 1958 and later became Key West's mayor. So it must have been called something else originally because Captain Tony didn't buy it till the 50s.
Right.
So it's...
Yeah, I mean, it was a number of different things, and bits and parts of the building, like I said, were either a morgue or a cigarette factory and different things. So it's just had a different... In its years, it's just kind of varied in different ways about how the structure was used. So
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple more facts here. Jimmy Buffett started there. He played here in the early 1970s and was often paid just in tequila and immortalized Tony in his song Last Mango in Paris. It's where he honored his laid-back island sound. And then with the haunted side of it, like you said, it's said to be haunted, tied to its morgue past and the hanging tree.
Right.
Patrons report seeing the lady in blue. Did you just mention this? Sorry.
I haven't. But
okay.
Go ahead. I was going to, so go ahead. I like that.
Yeah, sorry. Because I was looking this up a little bit while you were mentioning some of the facts that you had, so I wasn't sure if I'm repeating some of this. But anyway, patrons report seeing the lady in blue. It's a woman hanged for murder, and odd chills in the pool room built over old graves.
Right.
Oh, interesting. And there's also two tombstones that remain in the bar. Elvira Edmonds, who died in 1822, uncovered during renovations, and Reba Sawyers, moved there by her husband after he discovered her affair tied to the saloon.
Crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you're writing down some of these. Next time, when we go on family vacations or whatever, we should go check these out.
No, we should. I know.
You know, we
Yeah.
need to put them on our list of things to see. I don't know how far off they are from where we would be hanging out, but it'd be cool to come check that out.
Well, along with some of the things you mentioned, with that hanging tree, there's a belief that there were up to 17 people executed in that building.
Sheesh.
That's
In the building, too.
There's going to be some residue, spiritual
Yeah.
residue behind that, I would think. So, you know, it's pretty not that spectacular when you look at the outside of it. But here's a picture of the inside, just kind of weird. Those things hanging everywhere are dollar bills.
That's
I
also a
know,
little
I'm
bit
not sure how
dollars.
clear it comes across on the screen, but yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
What's the significance? You know what the dollar bills
I
are?
don't know. Just it's like a lot of places, you know, when it's a hangout and people go there, they find some reason to write things on walls or to connect or hang things. I couldn't find anything that really speaks to the origin of that. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time looking, but yeah, I couldn't see anything right off top that explains why people do that. So.
Yeah, there's also, it says there's a preserved Atlantic Goliath grouper. I don't know what that is. Hangs above the entrance. Legend says tossing a quarter into its mouth brings good luck until you leave the island.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like a place that takes the lore and legendary stuff and really plays it up, and people participate and have fun with it.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff's cool. If I ever, one day, when I maybe reach a certain financial status, I would love to start something like this. But, you know, you'd have to manufacture a little bit of the lore and everything around it.
Yeah.
But I just think places like this are super cool. So is that the hanging tree here we're seeing?
That is, yeah. Yeah, we're
just
looking
in the middle
right
of the
now
building.
at the picture of a tree in the middle of the building. Yeah, it grew through the building, and it's still there. But that's that hanging tree you were just talking about.
Interesting.
Crazy. So it does remain one of the most popular destinations down there in the Keys. A very lively atmosphere with just people, activity, and paranormal. And it just kind of adds to that tapestry and history of the Keys. And it's considered one of the most haunted places in Florida. Pretty neat, huh?
There's also, I don't know if you see, along with the dollars, it looks like there's license plates and bras hanging from the ceiling. I mean, this is pretty extensive. They have quite a bit of stuff hanging from the ceilings. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how clean that is. But, yeah, when you have clothing and dollar bills hanging all over the place. But I'm sure they do a great job keeping things, okay with the health department. So, well, we do have a quick 40-second to a minute video that goes into this a little. I'm going to play that right now.
An island icon, Captain Tony's Saloon has an intriguing past. One that includes murder, mystery, and even a bit of mayhem. Before becoming a popular watering hole, the building served as a few different roles. It was an ice house, the city morgue, a wireless telegraph station, and a cigar factory. It was also the original home of the famous Sloppy Joe's bar. It was 1865 when a hurricane hit the Florida Keys and water came crashing through the city, smashing nearly everything in its wake. The city morgue that would later become Captain Tony's was no exception to the devastation. The many corpses that were awaiting burial or autopsy were washed away except for one. History tells us that the one body recovered was lying in front of the building, and was later buried beneath the building, surrounded by holy water and enclosed by a wall where the pool room now resides. During the building's construction, while removing old flooring, workers discovered the skeletal remains of several people, and a grave marker of a woman named Elvira. It's believed that these may very well be some of the missing bodies that were lost after the hurricane. Many who visited this legendary bar have experienced some sort of inexplicable encounter. Often the events surround the ladies' restroom where people have reported various mysterious encounters.
Okay, Captain Tony's Saloon, a place in the Keys, and like you were saying, if we're ever down that way, might be worth a stop.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so as we get to our next section in Random Strangeness, we're going to talk about strange animals. We've had some really strange animals on this show before. I mean, not physically, but that we've talked about and covered. And this next one is, well, strange and bizarre. And it's called the Dumbo Octopus. Look at that thing.
Pokemon.
Yeah, it really does. Where do you think it gets the name Dumbo Octopus from?
Well, I think it was actually named after the Disney character just because of the ears.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And I wondered if it was named this and then Dumbo got its name, but I guess it's the other way around, I guess, where it was named after the cartoon, which I would have expected the ears to be a lot bigger to get that name, personally.
Me too. Yeah, that was interesting that they kind of compare the two. I mean, it does. I can see looking at this and calling it Dumbo, but you're right. Dumbo's got big ears, not this.
Yeah, these are like little, just very small ears. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
I was just looking through my notes here. I was trying to see if I could see when it was discovered, if it predates the actual Dumbo, but I don't know. So it is interesting, though. We will play a short video right now just to show you in its inhabitant, just swimming around and what it's like. So let's do that for about 45 seconds. Okay, the Dumbo octopus lives in the ocean, by the ocean floor, and it's found in many places around the planet. It's actually one that can live up to 23,000 feet deep below, making it among the deepest known octopuses to be able to handle that depth and pressure. Lives in cold water, under intense pressure, no sunlight. And yeah, it's just something that most people will probably never see because of where it lives.
Yeah.
But really neat.
Well, here's something interesting too. So the average octopus, or the average Dumbo octopus, is 8 to 12 inches in length. But the largest recorded one that they found was nearly 6 feet long and 13 pounds. So that's quite a jump. Here's 1 foot, and then they find a 6 foot one. Like that's a little crazier.
That is. I wonder, I didn't think to check into this, but now that you say that, I wonder how long they live. Because if they usually are pretty small, how old would it need to be 10 times bigger than that?
Yeah, I'm going to look that up right now. How long do...
So while you're doing that, I'll just mention a couple more things. There's no breeding season for the Dumbo octopus. Females can store sperm for a long period of time after mating with a male. The females carry the multiple eggs at different stages of development, and when they're ready to lay the eggs, they do so on the ocean floor, and it sits there. There's no evidence that there's any kind of parental care. They hatch eventually, and they hatch into well-developed juvenile Dumbo octopus. And then they're able to take off and just survive on their own. So that's weird. Yeah.
And according to Grok AI, the average or Dumbo octopuses, they kind of don't know. They said that it's because they're so elusive. There hasn't been a ton of study on it, but what the scientists can gather is that they only live about 3 to 5 years on average, which I would have expected. You see in a 6'1", like that one's like 200 years old or something, something crazy.
Right.
But they said that shallower octopuses typically they only live 1 to 2 years. So these would live, that they're estimating 3 to 5 years. So they live longer than a normal octopus or a shallow one that one of us might be familiar with seeing, but not crazy.
Crazy. Well, there you go, people. Octopus, or the Dumbo octopus. Our next animal, it's a strange one, and some people say you can almost see what this animal is thinking. It's called the Macropinna Microstoma. Hope I say these names right. But here's a picture right now. Why do people say they can almost see what they're thinking? Well, it's because the fish has a transparent frontal skull. You can see into its head, just like this picture right here. So you're seeing its brain, its eyes sit inside the head, and it almost looks like the skin or surface of the fish is transparent, like you can see through it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This fish lives at a depth of 2,000 to 2,600 feet deep, and they say it hangs pretty much motionless in the water. And this frontal lobe of its head is filled with a fluid, and the eye lenses sit inside of it, facing up, but it can turn and twist and do different things.
The eyes?
So it does, yeah. So the eyes sit inside rather than at the surface, but it can see through its own skin.
Interesting.
Weird. This one was discovered in the 1930s.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I just what I saw when I was researching this is it was discovered in the 30s, but it wasn't actually photographed alive until 2004. So, excuse me, 2004.
Wow. Yeah.
Interesting. So it is a depth dweller. So it's typically found between 2,000 to 2,600 feet deep in the North Pacific, from the Bering Sea to Japan and Baja California. It thrives in the ocean's twilight zone, and it says that the reason it hasn't been photographed alive is because the fragile dome of it, its fragile dome often collapses when it's brought to the surface.
Oh, wow.
So it can only survive
pressure
in
thing.
that depth.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is kind of weird because if you think about it, I'd have to look into that, but pressure of the ocean pushes down. So when you bring it up, the pressure should be non-existent, right?
Yeah.
And so why would it collapse? I don't know. Interesting.
Well, they say it's filled with some fluid. Maybe it adjusts depending on how deep it is. And maybe as it gets closer to the surface, something happens with the fluid in that skull.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, that is weird. Well, let's take a minute here. I have a short minute video where you see this thing live in the ocean. So let's show that right now. Okay, there you go. I mean, once again, the fish's transparent head allows it to capture maximum light with its upward-facing eyes, which can rotate and look forward and all around, providing it a unique visual advantage in the dark ocean depths. And its diet is primarily other small jellyfish and zooplankton.
Interesting.
Crazy. Would you have thought an animal like this existed? I mean, it's unbelievable on this planet, just the variety of animals that exist. It's crazy.
And it gets crazier when you go, the deeper you go.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, I'm all for space exploration. I know a lot of people would rather focus on our own planet and ocean. I mean, I think there's a lot of crazy stuff out in space, and we have to be doing that, but there's no reason we can't be doing this as well, because there are so many unique species that are in our own oceans, and we don't know anything about them. Like, as I was looking this up, it says that despite us, having known of this creature for the last 80 years, we really don't know anything much else. We don't know its lifespan, the population size, how it really behaves. Like, there's just a lot we don't know just because of how deep it is. It's hard to study.
Right.
So anyway, and
Very
how
true.
many other crazy things are down there that we don't know about.
Crazy. Okay, well, there you go. Our two strange animals, and now we're going to jump into our next category, which we've talked about on the show before, which is abandoned structures or houses. So this next one is called the Linwood Hall in Pennsylvania. Look at the size of that thing. It looks like the White House. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was my first thought with it, was it looks like the White House. And it's abandoned. And here's the thing is, like, I think this is a fairly recent picture, but they said that for this being vacant, it's like in great condition.
Right.
So it's only been vacant since 2000, but it's been on and off since the early 1900s, because I think there was a family that owned it, and the two members of that family actually died in the Titanic sinking.
Right.
Which I think it was like the son and the grandson of the person who built it, and so they weren't able to. It became unsure of who's going to inherit this massive property, and it was massive. I think it started at 70,000 square feet of land.
Yeah, it's crazy. 110 rooms.
Yeah. And anyway, so because of that, it became kind of unstable, and ever since then, people have owned it and passed it on and bought it. Like, everyone has wanted to restore it, but the price of restoring it is so expensive just for the size. But it says it's been completely vacant since 2000, and there is water damage and peeling paint and overgrowth, but it remains structurally sound with no major collapses, which is really rare for a building this old.
I think it was built in 1897.
Yeah.
They don't build things like they used to, that's for sure.
Yeah, for real. It did say that in 2023, it was purchased by a foundation for $9.5 million, and they're going to restore it, but they're estimating that's going to cost $100 million to restore it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Which, I mean, even this picture it's obviously you can tell there's damage, but it looks like there's some of the original furniture's in there. I mean, it's just this would be a cool place to visit.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like it wouldn't take too much to refurb this. I mean, this picture right here looks like
That's
ballroom.
awesome.
It's beautiful. Like,
Yeah,
that looks
awesome.
like you could almost use it today. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
So the owner was, I guess at the time, early 1900s, one of the wealthiest people. I guess he was an art collector and that sort of thing. Peter Brown Widener, I think was his name. And he was a really wealthy real estate person. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy. These pictures are just amazing.
I think they said that, like, I mean, he had art from, like, Raphael, and I thought I wrote it down, but that he had just tons of really rare art and paintings and stuff that obviously end up getting sold or donated to different museums and such. But he was, and you can tell by the ceiling and stuff, like, I mean, there was some incredible workmanship that went into this.
Incredible.
This looks like a chapel in this house.
It does.
And the building has its own power plant, whatever that means for a building built in 1897. But it did say that it had its own power plant.
I mean, look at this hallway here. It looks like you're looking at town hall at a big city or something. It's amazing. So it was created for those who are into architecture. I guess it was a famous architect, Horace Trumbauer, is the person who designed this home. So that's crazy.
110 rooms. I wonder how many, because they didn't have indoor. Did they have indoor plumbing back then? I don't think so. I wonder if there's no bathrooms.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think a person with this kind of wealth was probably at the very edge of incoming technology, so probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably where a large part of that budget would come from to restore it, though, is just updating the amenities. You know, the decor and everything inside is one thing, but to update the internals as far as like electrical, plumbing, all that stuff, I'm sure is a massive undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned this earlier about a child and such being lost in the Titanic. It's amazing how trauma to a family can just change the whole trajectory of where a family goes and what happens.
Yeah.
This staircase is crazy. Look at this. Yeah.
Look at that carpet, man. I mean, really, when I think about exploring abandoned places like this, I'm sure someone has. We should probably look that up at some point. There's tons of YouTubers that go and explore abandoned structures, and I imagine someone has visited this one because this one looks pretty incredible.
Yeah,
so
that's it from the street. Either. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, there you go. That is an amazing structure, the Linwood Hall in Pennsylvania. Our next one is the Elda Castle in New York. And this picture, I mean, this is an old picture right here that we're seeing, but wow, look at that. That thing is amazing in a different way.
Yeah, it almost looks like it could be a school.
That's right.
How big it looks. Now, I couldn't find too much on this one, but to your point about tragedy, I think this one too kind of skewed because the family that owned it, if I understand correctly, the husband and children passed away, if I understand.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I don't know how, but so they built this amazing estate, and then a large chunk of the family passes away, and the wife ends up moving, leaving it behind.
Yeah. So I guess it seems like the wife was an architect, Lucy Abbott Kate, and the husband, David Abercrombie, was a fashion industry guy. And I feel like, isn't that a current apparel?
Abercrombie? Yeah, that is a store. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think that's these people right here. And this was their house. So
I wonder if there's a relation, though. Maybe there's no relation. Maybe there is.
Maybe, yeah. But I mean, he was a fashion industry guy. So,
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Which is, let's see here. So the Elda Castle really stands, it's an acronym that stands for the 4 children. And they named it that castle in 1927 after, I guess, the first name of each of their kids. So Elda stands for the names of their 4 kids. Yeah. It was built on 50 acres of land, and a lot of people have visited this over the years to try to see if they can rehab it and do some things with it, but not a lot of success, and maybe it was just the cost of it. Now, this is an old picture of inside the house, and I mean, it really looks like it was a cool place, for sure.
Yeah, and this one's definitely worn down more than the other one that we saw.
For sure, yeah. So this is a picture back then. This is facing the other direction, the same room today. So it's sad to see that. It really is.
Yeah.
But look at the ceiling and look at the trusses and everything that holds that up. That looks like that's good to go even today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. And this is another picture from outside, from the side of the building. You can see part of the building or the castle in the tail end or the rear. It doesn't have a roof anymore. So it's definitely gone through some tough times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that a structure that's the same age essentially as the other house that we just looked at is in such different and vastly, disrepair.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, something like this, you wonder, I would think there'd be some homeless people that would have found this and made it home, rather than living
I'd be
under a
looking for
bridge.
this place if I was homeless. I'd be coming in here and claiming this as my own.
Exactly.
Living like a king.
Okay, well, Anthony, there we go. Random Strangeness, another episode. What did you find the most interesting on this episode?
I really like learning about abandoned properties. So that Linwood house, to me, I think is probably the most fascinating thing. I just looked it up while we were talking as well, and I think it's only, if I'm looking up the right thing, I think it's only like 12 miles from central Philadelphia. And we visit Philadelphia often,
regularly,
so
yeah.
I want to go see this. I want to see.
We need to put it on the list. That's for sure.
I mean, what a cool, last time we were in Philadelphia, we found a little village on our drive to the airport. We just pulled over and went walking around. I love that type of stuff, historical. And so.
And do you remember that village that we found was from the 1700s?
Yeah.
And I
just
never
off the
knew
side
that
of the road.
existed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were driving down the freeway, and parts of Philadelphia, for those who haven't been there, are just covered in greenage and trees, which is one of the great things about back east is how green it is. But you can be driving through Philadelphia and not even know what's, you're like driving through like a little, I don't want to say a canyon or anything, but like you're driving around hills and there's just so much greenage. And as we're driving, we look through and we see some old homes, like some brick homes and stuff. And we're like, hey, what's that?
All right.
And, we got some time because I was flying out that day. We got some time. Let's pull over. Let's check it out. And it ends up being, some historical site from the 1700s. Fascinating. I loved it. It was awesome. And it was only a few buildings, but there was like I forget what it was, like a little mill or something right there. Right. And it was, awesome. I love seeing that stuff. So anyway, the Linwood house is the most, Linwood Hall was very fascinating to me simply because of its size, its condition, and the proximity to the city. So and that's a little weird to me too, that it was so well kept, being so close to a major city. I would have expected that one to be a little more banged up, beat up, some more trespassers and stuff like that. But anyway, so I would love to go visit that one next time we're there.
Yeah, I'm sure you're like me. I always see these old structures, whether it's old pictures of a city or things like these, or I think back, what was this like back in its heyday? It's fun and cool to think about it. It must have been amazing to see those structures when they were at their top level. So,
well, and the other thing I think of too is like when we looked at this house, the Elda Castle, we looked at that main room with graffiti. I always reflect on, can you imagine what that family, before the catastrophes or the tragedies, they're just hanging out in there, having no clue what will become of that property, right? There's that old saying, or that old kind of adage or saying that, when you die, someone else is going to own your stuff, right? Most of us don't think about that, but every once in a while I think about that and say, okay, I'm in my office, all the stuff I'm doing down here, maybe spending time with the family, and it doesn't have to be in the office. Maybe it's in our main living room and all stuff. In 50 years, what's this place going to look like?
All right.
Maybe there'll be a different family having a good time, or maybe it'll just be trashed. you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
And 50 years ago, what did it look like, or whatever? So I always get fascinated by those types of thoughts.
I'm with you. It's an interesting thought to have, and just kind of get you going. So,
yeah.
Well, there we go. The end of our episode today. Anthony, thanks again so much for being on. here we go, random strangeness everywhere we look. So everybody else out there, also thank you for listening and watching. And just remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until the next time we meet, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.